Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good, and you have found good in abundance by tuning into the best show in the entire internet. That's a pretty big thing. The entire internet about one of the most important institutions in the history of the world, and it's one of the foundational aspects of living in happiness in the world, and that is called marriage, whatever language you have it in. And our particular show is called Marriage with Joy. And do not think it's anything other than what they do. These are two pieces that go together. It's not an oxymoron. Marriage with joy is the essence of life. Now, we are blessed with a remarkable panel of experts. We have in the great Northwest one of the most remarkable beings on the planet today. Her name is Dr. Diane Medved. Yes, she is a raconteur. She's an author. She's a mother, a grandmother, and a wife, and a friend. And she's just bursting forth with informational, transformational ideas about living in joy in marriage. We have in the great Southeast in Florida, wonderful Maura Sweeney. She is known as the ambassador of happiness. And she, look at that, if you're watching this, she exudes. And if you're listening to it, you can see her smile even just listening. And we have the person who's not with us today because she's traveling and she had to take care of one of her children who was not well and then got on a different plane. And that is in the southwest corner of the United States in Manhattan Beach, and that is fabulous Lori McDermott. Lori, yay, okay. She is the wife expert. And of course, we have in the middle of the desert in Henderson, Nevada, Barry Shore, the ambassador of joy. And we're here because of one thing and one thing only, and it's for you. That's right. You tuned in because you care the most in the entire world about you. And that's great, because when you become the best you make the world a better place, especially in the context of marriage, because marriage is that institution which, in my humble opinion, I believe of my wonderful friends here on the panel, it gives you the greatest opportunity for growth in life. Now, is it possible to grow without marriage? Certainly. It's much more difficult. You can have friendships, you can have all kinds of other things, but marriage is a unique process. And it's unique because it brings together two beings that at one and the same time we'll use it as an example, called it fine sandpaper, making things smoother, and two pieces of flint stone, not the Flintstones, but when you have flint against each other, you can create sparks, you can create a fire, you can get warm together and build something together. And it's all built, in my humble opinion, and what we're going to be discussing mostly today, about this word called listen. Now, listen, I have an acronym for it, and it stands for locating insightful, sustainable, transformative energy now. See, the ability to listen is a skill. We all think we know how to listen, but in reality, as you get past the age of 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, 70, you finally become aware that listening is a skill, and it takes work, which is okay, and it takes empathy, which is important, and it takes a mind. And it's the ability to not speak when someone else is speaking and listen to what they're really saying, not just the words they're using. So with that as a jumping off point, usually we have dozens and dozens, not hundreds of questions that I try to put into a context and share with our panel and ask their opinions on. We're going to do a little bit of a different format today. And we're going to jump right into this not concept, this ability to use listening as that path of growth in our context called marriage. So I'm going to ask wonderful Dr. Diane Medved if you'd be kind enough to begin the process and just give us 3, 4, 5 minutes of what you use for yourself and your husband and your family, and what you counsel other people when it comes to this great skill. I call it a skill called listening. You don't have to agree with me, by the way, of course.
I'm a little unclear on the question, which, if I may rephrase it, is it, how do you listen?
Yes. How does one learn how to listen? And is it really important?
Well, I think you made a very important point just now, Barry, that listening is something you learn to do. Because children, when they're very young, are so self-centered. They don't really care what you have to say. And they're so involved in what they're observing and what they're feeling and what they're wanting and what they're needing. They don't know how to listen because they don't want to listen. All they want is to focus on themselves. It's a sign of their growing and maturity that they even have the ability, the capability to listen. So we don't expect children to listen. Some people stay children that way and never learn and never take the energy nor the interest in other people. Some of those are narcissists, and some of them are just not good friends and not good spouses. But the key is that you have to care about someone else in order to learn to listen. And that's the key. You have to want to know what not only the other person has to say, but what they might need, what they might want, what might make them happier. And the orientation has to move from being about yourself to being about caring for the other person, loving the other person. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's something that we learn in the Torah and that we learn in life is useful. People who are vindictive or angry or get upset when somebody cuts them off in traffic, whatever it is, they're thwarting their own happiness and they're thwarting their own growth. And in marriage in particular, that is the one place where you can practice listening because it's a safe haven. It's an opportunity. You choose to be with someone because you clearly care about them. Well, what's more important than that? And what is more important about building into your life a time and a style of listening? Every couple has its own style. Sometimes one is more loquacious than the other, and the other is much less. And that may mean that they learn a style of interaction whereby one asks more questions of the other. Or it could be that they both have something to say and they time the amount that they each get to say it. But key is to build it in. In the morning when you wake up, make sure that after you say Moda ani lefanecha, thank you to God for being awake, you turn to your spouse and say, it's so wonderful to wake up next to you. It's so wonderful to have you in my home with me, that we're building a home together. Reiterate the purpose of your day and the purpose of your relationship. Then throughout the day, if you can, it's great if you can have some contact, maybe a text, maybe a phone call, maybe some other way that you make that connection. That's what communication is, knowing that the other person's thinking of you. And then finally, as you come back together after your busy work days, which I assume would be a part, then you need to let the other person know your experience of the day, because that's what lets the other person into your life. That's what shows closeness. That's what intimacy really is. It's not physical, it's psychological, it's communicating. And when you talk about listening, listening is more than half of communicating, because you need to take in who the other person is, and then you need to affirm it. Make sure that when they say something, that you affirm that what they said, it was heard and cared about by you. You may not agree, And you're allowed certainly to say your opinion of things. But the first thing to do is to affirm that you heard and understand and appreciate that they are an individual and have that opinion or had that experience. And if it's a sad thing, then you say, oh, I feel so bad for you. And if it's a happy thing, then you go, yay, because then that broadens their joy in the experience. And so to have someone to share with, an Azer Conecto, someone opposite you who can give you an opinions you may not want to hear, but also can share with you all the experiences of life, is the most precious thing that anyone can ever have. And really, people who don't treasure their marriages for that are really missing out on life's basic joy, I think.
So I can't even begin to unpack all these wonderful pieces that you mentioned. But let's begin just a few little things here, because I think they're critical. The idea of children, as we all know, by definition, are self-centered because they can't articulate or be anything other than that. It takes in quotation marks, an adult, and we don't know what age that happens at, but whatever the age is, to begin to recognize that there is someone other than me in the world. Me! And when that begins to happen, that creates a openness to life that is inviting opportunity to say, I'd like to have the me meet someone else so I can have a mate, and in a positive way. And I really want to say thank you, because I think this point about communicating during the day, whether it's text, a phone call, just I got to tell you, okay. I used to write my wife letters. I would write her a letter and I'd mail it, and she'd get it 3-4 days later, or whatever it took time for the. And she got the letter. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I wanted to write you a letter. That's all." And I haven't done it in many years, but the point is that it was, first of all, she liked it, and it was novel. But I really want to emphasize what you said here about this, recognizing, just affirming someone else's experiences of life during the day. And I'm going to make a big statement here. You don't have to agree, because I want Maura to chime in on something, is that, let's be blunt, you can't get this outside of marriage. Now, I have to put myself asterisk. Can you get this in a loving relationship where two people live together and such, and they're not married? Yes, it's quite possible. It seems to be less likely, only because the beauty of marriage is that there's a C word there. And that C word is not just caring and not just connection, it's commitment. See, marriage really has a commitment aspect to it that one thinks that you have when you're living with someone. But let's be blunt, it's not in the same exact way. You know, that you could be living with somebody for 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. It's not marriage. I mean, the way I see it. So Maura, I want to turn it over to you and ask you, in that same context, what is it about marriage that enables listening to happen? And is it really a critical part of the process of marriage with joy?
You know, Barry, I saw Diane's face when you asked that question. She was first up like, it was huge. What kind of a question? Glad you went first again, Diane. And for those listening, they need to know we are so unrehearsed in this, which is good. We never know where you exactly are going to go, Barry. All right, listening. And I tend to be more of a storyteller, where Diane's the writer and has the PhD in the subject. I wanted to come up with a few things. The first thing is, with listening, so important, and I love it. What is our intention in our relationship with our spouse? If we really want to put them front and center in our lives and in their lives, to let them know we view them in an important fashion, a couple of things coming to mind. When they speak or when they're ready to speak, do you get rid of your phone? Do you turn off the TV set? Do you shut other things out? And do you look them in the eye? And in today's world, probably more than any other, I don't know if people know how to get rid of the outside white noise and just say, you know what? This is our time where we're going to be on the same frequency. So I would say intention. That in itself is maybe setting up the parameters. But beyond that, we think we're listening sometimes, but I think that we're hearing but not listening truly.
Mhm.
We have the ears, we hear things, but oftentimes we're hearing through our own belief systems, our own biases, and our own set of judgments. Oh, here he goes again. There she is again, the complaints. So these are some things I would say. In our intentions, in our marriage, we can intend to do two things: listen to ourselves when we speak. Sometimes it's interesting to say, let me hear my words as they're going out there, as if I'm a fly on the wall or I'm someone else. And I remember the first time that happened to me, we were talking about when does this sense of listening come into our own consciousness. I was in a totally different life, married at the time, but I was in management. And we were standing outside one day during a fire drill in the heat of downtown Tampa, probably in the middle of July or August. And everybody outside of this big building was complaining about how tired they were, how hot they were, how hard they work. And all of a sudden, I heard myself as a person of influence. So now translate this back to marriage, right? Chiming right in. Oh, yeah, I got up so early this morning. I had all this traffic. I'm so tired. And my first thought, hearing myself speak to others out there, was, I'm supposed to be setting an example, and I am joining in the complaint crowd rather than raising the standard. That was so revolutionary for me. I don't think I ever stopped listening since. So now let's put it in the marriage sense. How much, when our spouse is speaking to us, are we really hearing? Can we hear through their noise? But let me even say it this way. When we are speaking to our spouse and we want to get something across to them, are we using the language we always use? Are we falling into the traps of what is our common conversation and parlance? Or are we saying, how can I hear myself as I'm speaking as if I am my spouse? What does it sound like to them? What is the energy like? What is the heart coming out? What is my spirit? I think that is, if we could start working in that area, it's brilliant. And I will tell you, in the case of myself, I might have shared this one previous time, eons ago. My husband stopped me when I was speaking and he said to me, do you realize you talk out of both sides of your mouth? And I had no idea that I was literally contradictory. And what I did, and it's not the first or the last time, I said, tell me what you're hearing. Tell me what I'm saying so that I can hear what I'm saying. And I'm telling you, it brought my awareness of myself, my consciousness of self, and also of what I was projecting outwardly to my husband. It also increased such a sense of trust between us to say, tell me what you're hearing so that what I think I'm saying, which could be off, and what you're hearing, we can reconcile. The last thing I want to add, it doesn't sound like it's has anything to do with listening, but it came to mind. Do you realize in any relationship, but most specifically in marriages, we do the tango. One moves forward, the other moves back, and we do it in sync. And it takes two to tango. So if we have an issue, and especially one where there is this constant ongoing conflict, let's say, do you know what I've always taught myself to do is to say, what am I doing to contribute to this tango that I don't like? It could be a rift. It could be the mother-in-law situation. It could be the way we're bringing up the kids. What am I doing? What can I listen to in terms of my communication that I can adjust accordingly so that my husband and I, my spouse and I, could work together toward a same or unified end? And I think once we do that, the trust, the ability to communicate, the oneness, the energy, and the harmony so increases, and so does the sense of peace and joy in the marriage and everything that flows from it. Hope that was something out of a question that was huge, Barry.
It was very helpful to me because I want to unpack a few things that are intersecting from what wonderful Diane mentioned and what you're mentioning now. And these are some of the words that I think apply to marriage, distinct from, again, couple living together. Let's go to the first extreme. Somebody just living by themselves, be it a man or a woman. You don't get this benefit. Hello? You don't get the ability to grow in the same way. Yes, of course you can grow. You're friends, you have business, but you don't get this intimacy that comes with marriage. And now take a couple that's living together. Yes, you can go to couples therapy. You can go to couples more meetings and things like that. But again, without commitment that we're going to make a family. Because oftentimes people that are living together tend not to have children. It's not that they don't, they tend not to. Children come as a result oftentimes of a marriage, and it has a little more sacredness to them. But I want to use a couple of words that Diane used and you and bring them together. And Diane mentioned the idea of a safe haven. The ability of a safe haven is that it is just that. I can actually say things that I might not say to anybody else, even a therapist. I could actually say to my wife something about, let's say, I'll take an easy one, food preparation. Happens to be my wife prepares the food. She won't let me prepare food. She won't let me wash dishes. You hear that? I want to. She won't let me. But when she does prepare food and she does do the dishes and such, if I am dumb enough not to recognize the love that's in there, the vitamin L, and how she cleans the dishes and how she prepares the food, well, then shame on me. Because that's not in any way creating life and love. So the safe haven to be, now again, I won't mention, but talk about sexuality as well. The ability to speak openly and say what you like and not, and ask the other person what you like and not. So I want to go, like you said, wonderful, Maura, about this idea of creating trust. And I wrote down the word newness. You didn't mention it, but I'm going to tell you how you did. When you walked outside that building and you were in the managerial role and you hear other people are in the complaint department, and then you chimed in, but you didn't realize you're chiming in until you realized you were chiming in. To be able to hear oneself is a sign of growth and maturity, right? Quite simple. Well, look, am I saying that? Am I actually using a negative term when it comes to my spouse? I don't want to. I mean, I really don't. I'm going to bite my tongue. It's not what I really wanted to do. And it came out. Okay, I can apologize. But more importantly, it's to be more like what you said, Maura, and woke up and say, I'm not going to do that because I'm the leader in our relationship. And here's where I'm going to chime in and say the following. You talk about the idea of tango. So we know it's a cliche. It takes two to tango. I don't know why. I could just go and move, because it's not the same. You know, when you're moving something around. Or when I first learned how to do the cha-cha. You remember what the cha? Anyone know what a cha-cha is? Okay. Cha-cha-cha. It was great moves and such like that. You learn how to move and such like that. It's much better when you do it with somebody else because that's a rhythm. So this newness of I'm the leader in the family. But guess what? So's my wife. She's the leader in the family. And it's not that you can't have two leaders because we're both, like you said, yes, Jimmy, you said I speak out of two sides of my mouth. What are you talking about? You asked him. Wow. And you wanted him to tell you. Wait a minute. That's amazing. Right? Tell me if I'm not behaving properly. I didn't see it. My wife told me something last week. They didn't realize. I'm 74 chronologically. You think I wouldn't make these silly statements anymore. Hello, we're all people, no? But the ability to create a newness in a relationship, wow. And we're married 45 years. So this is, I think, one of the most beautiful aspects of what marriage is, especially marriage with joy. Because remember, joy is that acronym that stands for journey of you. If you truly want to have a journey, enjoy and grow, well, the best environment is a garden that has lots of stuff in it. Gardens oftentimes have mulch, right? That's a fancy term we use for mulch. What is mulch really? Yeah,
Come
that
on,
other
I
stuff.
have a word
It's
for it, Barry.
decaying things, sometimes called manure. You know, I remember we used to put we got steer manure for the garden in Venice, and she would put out there for the roses and such. Wow, did that smell real? But without that kind of stuff, you're not going to grow roses, are you? And roses have thorns. So it's this ability to live in this unique process called marriage that is so invigorating and energizing. And to go to what you said, wonderful Diane, to wake up in the morning and recognize and say thank you to the good Lord that we are alive and that you have someone there that you don't really just like, but you can't imagine not being there and with. You know, you can tingle no matter what age you are. It doesn't matter.
Hey, it takes two to tingle.
I think we need it. Okay, see, she's doing it. Isn't that wonderful? It does take two to tingle, doesn't it?
Apparently.
Me, yeah, takes two to tingle. Okay, this on that high note. Ta-da! We only have a few more minutes, but I want to ask you, wonderful Diane, if you would speak a little bit more to this process of moving from the childlike, not just innocent, but focus on self and getting to the point of caring for someone else. Where does that begin to happen? And I don't mean chronologically. Where does that happen in a human? Does that happen because of an event, a process, a natural progression?
Well, I think that parents make a huge difference because children start to differentiate themselves from others. And especially if they're siblings with whom they have to compete for parental attention, then kids start to see, I'm different from another person. And therefore, I want to get that person to pay attention to me. So it starts at a very low level, but at least it's differentiation. And then the movement up is, I can be nice to the other person. And if a parent says to the child, be kind, let so-and-so go first, it's a nicer thing to do, and introduces those kind of selfless concepts and repeats them, and most importantly, models them, is selfless, and then mentions it, well, then the child's going to learn faster. He's got a good teacher. If the child doesn't have a good teacher and has selfish parents or parents who yell at each other, it's going to be more difficult. And I think the lucky children have parents who love each other and who show that love to each other in front of the kids. Now, not every aspect of that love, perhaps, but hug them and kiss them and say to the kid, hey, aren't we happy that mommy's home? Don't we love it when mommy's around? Don't we love to bring her breakfast in bed? Or don't we love it when we see her smile? You know, if you see your spouse smile and it lights up the room, which it should do for you, then you should mention it. Just say, I love to see you smile. And then the child hears that. And the child hears, oh, you can say compliments. Oh, you can respond to what someone's doing with something positive. Mm-hmm. And that's how they differentiate. And again, not every kid has the same environment at home. And I think that's hugely important. Also, different kids have different personalities. And some of them are naturally more outgoing, more ingoing, meaner. Some kids are not happy all the time, and that's their natural disposition. They can learn to be happier. They can learn to uplift themselves. but you have to work with each kid as he or she is, and you have to be the person that you want your child to grow up to be. And so how do you learn that? In your marriage, you set aside a time and you do exactly what you said, Barry, and what you said, Mara, which is you make sure that you turn off all the extraneous influences like the cell phone, and you sit down and say, okay, after we each get home, we're going to sit down together in the living room and we're going to talk about what happened today. And then you model it to each other. If kids happen to be around because the content is okay for them, that's nice. Or if you go into another room, let them know we're going to go in the other room and share our days. We're going to go in the other room and talk. And that's a mommy daddy thing that we do because we love each other. And repeat that. And again, you can learn it yourself. Even if you don't have it in your relationship, you can propose it. You can institute it. You can practice it. Good communication is practice. And when I have done therapy with couples, I often say I'm a tutor, a teacher. They can learn it because it's education. You can educate yourself on how to communicate. So if you intentionally do that, one thing you could do is get a book on communication. There are quite a few of them. I can show you or refer a few. Just go into any bookstore and pick out a book on how people can communicate. Go through it chapter by chapter with your spouse and discuss each chapter. Maybe you'll disagree. Maybe you'll say it's not relevant to you. But whatever it is, it gets you talking, and it gets you talking about talking. So how do you institute it? You make a plan, you make a program, you make your own class, you demonstrate it, and you practice. And when, just as Maura said, when one of you isn't doing what he or she wants to do, then you can point that out as the helpmate opposite you to be the only person in the only environment where it's safe to do so. So I think both of you made some really important points on how to get communication and listening to be central to your relationship.
So this is, I want to mention this idea and use the word skill, because that's what it is. It's a skill. And as often as you practice it, the better you become at it. And you'll enjoy it more because you recognize all the benefits that come. As you said, you light up the room. I love looking at my wife. I really do. To me, it's one of the greatest things when I tell her. She's just beautiful and adorable. She doesn't like it. She says, how can you call a 75-year-old woman adorable? I said, because you are. But the point is that this skill of listening, communicating is just that. Just as you learn other life skills, such as how to walk across the street by looking both ways and knowing what to do, say please and thank you, et cetera, et cetera. These are skills, and they become better. And as they become better, you become. But again, in the context of a marriage situation, is where you have that safe haven, that trust, that ability to learn and fall down and pick yourself up, because the person on the other side of the room is not going to laugh at you. And if they do, you just tickle them. So you can takes two to tingle. And I love it. I'm going to be using it frequently over the next few weeks. I'm telling you, I love that. It takes two to tingle. Woo! Maura, we only have a few more minutes. Let's speak about this idea of modeling. And I want to go back to when you were a manager or in management, and recognized that because you had this role, that it was incumbent upon you to not join the chattering complaint class. And the reason for that is why?
The reason, because I was responsible for the direction and the success or failure of all of those in my wake. And because from childhood, I think I understood the implications and the possibilities of influence. So because we're in the context today of marriage, our bodies, our communication, everything we model, as Diane said, we are influencing our spouse. We're influencing the development, awareness, and future growth of our children. And so modeling is so important. And not every one of us has had the benefit of growing up in the ideal household. In fact, I don't know. And I've never met anybody that has.
Right.
Been in the wrong one. I agree with Diane. Now, I did not read books growing up as a child about how to improve upon a marriage when I was looking at one that maybe wasn't ideal, but what I used to do. And people could pick up what they want from this. It was back in the day. I used to watch old half-hour TV shows, Donna Reed, whatever they were, the half-hour shows where every family problem was resolved in a half hour, but I saw the modeling that was healthy between a father and a mother, parenting. And so what I did is I took it upon myself as a young person to model after what I found to be of interest and appeal to me. But the second part I wanted to say about how do we listen and how do we even convey this to children, the next generation? Yes, it's a modeling that we do so they can look and they can follow it because it becomes familiar. And you can be an influence that way. But there's another aspect to this. Sometimes people will refer to it as our cellular energy. I could call it the intentions. A child may see something, but what they'll retain even longer is the feeling that goes into their bodies, into their hearts, into their souls, and it stays with them. So you could look like one thing, and underneath it, a child maybe could pick up a lot of resentment or double talk or duplicity. But imagine if you are a husband or a wife and you really want to be a good listener and teach that to your children and help develop them, then you take your modeling and you team it with your intention, the intentions of your heart, so that what you're doing is not just a form of something. It is literally the energy and the spirit of something you wish to influence your marriage in, and then influence your children and their perception of life and family and future marriage. And I'm telling you, I had some things like that in my early childhood. I could tell you today, I could still feel those same feelings. And I know what they're like, and I know how powerful they are, and I know how life-changing they can be when people truly feel love, security, commitment, and an undergirding of, I wish the best for you. There is nothing else to be compared to it.
And that is the essence of marriage with joy. Whoa! And that's why you tuned in. Remember, the show is not about wonderful Diane, as great as she is, or Maura, or Lori, or Barry. It's about you becoming the best you. And that's the reason why this show, thank God, flourishes. We urge you, please just go say, yes, I like this podcast. Share it with at least 5 people. So that means we'll touch hundreds of thousands of people. Just 5, that's it. And say you love the podcast. Invite more people to come and listen, send in your questions, such, because this is the best show in the entire internet, which means the entire world, about marriage with joy. And on that high note that Maura and Diane has brought us to, we urge everybody to live the life of positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant feelings, thoughts, words, and deeds. And our blessing from all of us is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. And let me see here. Yeah. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.